Welcome to the Nonmember Project. Today we're talking to Colin. And Colin, what are you majoring in? Because I cannot remember.
I'm a master's in geology with a focus in vertebrate paleontology.
Awesome. And Colin, how did you get to BYU?
That's an excellent question. So I initially applied to graduate school when I was finishing up my degree, or in this case, degrees. I will boast degrees at UC Davis. And I was looking at programs, and I thought 5 programs was enough. So while I initially looked at BYU, because the 2 most important things I was told, at least for my field, when you're looking at grad schools, one is, are you and the professor going to be able to vibe well? Are you going to get along, be able to work together? 2, are you studying similar things? You don't have to study similar animals, but similar methods. BYU had what I was looking for, so it was a program on my radar, but I thought 5 was fine, so I didn't apply to BYU. Didn't get in, went through a horrible stasis year during COVID, which I hated because I just wanted to get back under the rock of academia, not to make geology jokes. So I applied to 9 schools the second time around, including BYU. It was only part of the way through when I was like, what is this ecclesiastical endorsement I have to fill out? What is this? And my dad's like, hey, dummy, it's BYU, Brigham Young University. It's the Mormon school. And I was like, oh, spent so much time looking at the program, didn't really read the name. But the program is amazing. So that is why I came here. I ended up because of the program that BYU offers for vertebrate paleontology and the amazing professors and faculty that I get to work with here, right, is what drew me. And, so I applied. Most of the rules didn't apply to me. So I was like, this shouldn't be a big problem. I wish I could grow a beard, but that's okay, slightly scraggly today. And that's how I ended up at BYU.
Yeah, and by most of the rules didn't apply to you. You were already following most of them.
Yeah, I don't drink coffee of my own volition, I believe is the right word. I'm trying not to use wrong words here. Don't drink coffee. I don't drink alcohol. I don't smoke. I had to reduce my amount of swearing. That wasn't as hard as I thought. Most of my clothes are normal, I would say. And then, I didn't have a girlfriend, so I was living a chaste and virtuous life.
That's awesome. So, yeah, when you were signing up, looking at the rules, you're like, it's going to be fine for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My friends were like, how are you going to do it? They're like, I wouldn't be able to survive. And I'm like, well, you and I are different, so I'll do it.
So one of the really cool things that you bring to BYU is that you're not religious, correct?
Yeah, I would say I'm an atheist, so not really religious, though I've grown up in a religious background. My grandparents are Catholic, and my step-grandparents are Presbyterian. So, cool. Yeah, I've been around religion. I've seen it, experienced it. My parents are agnostic. My father grew up going to Catholic school, so he has that experience, but it's not the path I went down. So I am a little different.
Yeah, and we do not have a ton of people at BYU that aren't religious. I think partially because sometimes it can be difficult for people to interact with a religious environment when they're not used to that. So do you think that having some religious family members contributed to your understanding of how the religious environment is here, or would you say that it was kind of a culture shock for you? How did you feel about it?
I think for some part, there were some things that made sense, some things I understood. I still have plenty of questions, and my roommates are luckily super cool and answer any questions I have when I definitely don't understand things. And they answer questions for my friends when, of course, my friends are like, hey, Colin, do they do this at BYU? And I'm like, I don't know. I need to ask. And, my roommates and friends here are super chill. But there were some things that were definitely different. I've come to realize, I'm going to use a term I'm sure I'm not the only one to use. It's not a bad thing. It's just a thing. People at BYU, I definitely say in some ways, live in the bubble or a bubble. There is a big bubble here that sometimes I'm talking about the outside world and I'm like, outside, they do this. This happens. And then I'm like, why am I speaking like, inside and outside of, it's just,
outside of the BYU bubble.
Outside of the BYU bubble.
It's a thing. Yeah. And LDS members use that term too. So yeah, it's definitely real. What would you say some things are that are, you would say, like, quote unquote, in the bubble?
What are some things that are in the bubble? People assume, I think they see a white guy with blonde hair and they just look at me and assume I'm a member, like many people here, right? Because they're like, well, if 98% of the population are members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, you're probably one of them too. So people use the specific terminology, right? Such as I mean, I guess undergarments or PDAs. PDAs. They use terms that to them are just standard. It's something they know every day. It's as if I was talking on campus to someone who goes to Davis and I used a term that they would understand, right? But as an outsider, I'm like, what is this term PDA? What does it mean? And they suddenly go, what? You don't know it? Oh, and then they explain it. So
Yeah.
that's been a big shock for sure. A good shock, I would say personally for me, it's nice to live in a place where for the most part, you don't see people smoking a lot. You don't deal with smoke a lot. And I'm not pressured to drink.
Yeah, that's actually such a big deal. What are some of the most positive experiences you've had so far because this is BYU? Like just kind of specific to this experience and maybe different from the experiences you had at UC Davis.
Yeah. So like I said before, and I'll have to split this in two. One has been just the culture. I love the culture. I'd say I like to think I have good morals. And therefore, a lot of people here, everyone here I've met has great morals. So it's good to be in a society where people are just, they're good people, they're friendly, they want to help each other out. And like I said, I'm not pressured to drink or do drugs or do things that maybe, in society or at Davis happen all the time that I'm not comfortable with, There isn't an expectation, oh, what, you're not part of a frat, bro? You don't go to frat parties? And I'm like, no, instead I'm studying on Saturday nights, because that's how life is. And so I have really enjoyed the culture, and I think I just have, at least in my opinion, fit into it really well. So it's been really easy to just live here. It hasn't felt too different, other than one of the biggest things that has been interesting is, it's a Sunday night. Colin wants to go out to eat. Or sorry, no, it's a Saturday night. Colin wants to go out to eat, and it's 8 p.m. and many places are closed. And Colin's like, what do? Where the food? So.
Yep, things close early here. There's not a big nightlife. I feel like the nightlife does happen, but it's like in people's apartments individually.
It's a lot more personal, right?
Yeah.
It's hanging out with people. And my apartment especially is one kind of acts like a rock where we're there and people sometimes talk to us, but also we just kind of vibe. We're just there. So
yourself a little bit.
We're not always part of the happening that's happening. So. Right.
Have you been to LDS Church since you've been here?
Yes. There have been several times I have gone to church. Like I had a buddy who's like, Colin, I'm speaking. Will you be there for me, please? And I'm like, but I went. Or, I went when this one girl asked me if I wanted to go to state conference. And I'm like, I need to study for a midterm. But I'm like, all right, I'll go. So most recently, though, and this will get back to our last question. I just wanted to touch on this. As of March 4th, 2023, my life took a big change when I lost my father. And, family and friends are always going to be there for you, and they have been when you lose someone like that in your life. But especially here, it's just been a tremendous help with everyone who's just reached out and in big ways or small ways just checked up on me, brought me a hot meal or just made sure I was okay. So I've been really thankful for all the positive interaction I've had from people here after I lost my dad. And so the third time, the most recent time I went to church was I just decided to be with my roommates, and I went to service the day after my dad died on a Saturday. So I went to church on Sunday and sat there. I cried a bunch, but I just it was peaceful.
Yeah. That's really special that you've been able to share that with people here.
Yeah.
Do you think that it's been just sort of a bonding experience for you? Is it more you connecting with people around you or connecting with religion, would you say?
In general, or specifically related to my father's
Specifically
passing?
Related to your father's passing.
I think it's been a little bit of both. I've had people who say, obviously you're going to see him. There is an afterlife. And there's people who are like, and if you want to talk about, death and afterwards, right, we could talk about that. And, the Book of Mormon will help you with, there are some of these passages you should read. And then other people have just been wanting to connect. Most recently, I share a lot of things with a lot of people. And a while back, I just shared this, one of my father's favorite candy bars, a Toblerone, with someone I knew. And then just the other day I come out of my room and there was a bar of Toblerone there with a note from him saying, a while back you shared this with me, just, out of the goodness of your heart. And so I realized this relates to, the man who brought you up. And so I'm sorry. And I know it's been tough, and let me know if you need anything. And I was just like, it was a small, but it was a gesture that made my day.
Yeah, that's really sweet. And I think I've seen that a lot too. And when I've gone through hard times here, I feel like the connections here are so strong because of the way that church is structured within your neighborhood and all of that. Honestly, I've had a lot of times where I felt like even my own community sometimes wouldn't come together as strongly as this community does. And so I've really appreciated, as much as, there's difficult things that have happened as well, like there's been some really strong moments of the community coming together to take care of people within it. And I've been really blessed to be on the receiving end of that. So yeah, it sounds like you've had similar experiences with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So what are some experiences you've had that were a little more negative? Sorry, we had to get that part, but
these are gonna exist.
Yeah.
And there are things definitely I do get disgruntled about. And that's as harsh as I'll get. I really do feel, I think it was you who had put it best, I really do feel sometimes in certain situations that as different missionaries have found out about me, it's almost felt a little bit like hunting for me, or just, seeking me out, right? Because the first time I was ever technically approached was somebody I knew just gave my information without really asking me if that was okay. They just gave my information to the missionaries who reached out, and that became about a 8-month process of back and forth. They'd check in, they'd get to, you want to talk about, Jesus Christ in the Book of Mormon? I'd say no, and they'd go away for a month and then come back the next month, and then I'd repeat the process, right? And then finally ended up culminating in person with, I was a friend's token non-member because he wanted to hang out with some of the local missionaries, but they're like, we can't hang out unless there's at least one non-member present. So he's like, Colin, you wanna hook it up? And I was like, sure. I did. That eventually led to them, read one chapter of the Book of Mormon. I don't really want to. Read one chapter. No, I don't want to. Read one chapter. Finally, I said, fine. Read the chapter. That was actually when I saw my parents. They came to visit, and they're like, look, just tell them, you're not interested, right? You don't have to attend this. Tell them you're not interested, and tell them, if I change my mind, I will come to you, right?
And we will. Like, we know exactly where to find you. Don't worry.
Exactly. Yeah. So, I then had that meeting of me telling them, look, I'm just not interested. This isn't for me, but if I change my mind, I will come to you. That took a while, but they finally were like, all right, we understand. And then, they were gone. More recently, another friend said they gave my info to a missionary, but that person never reached out. And then I just had this most recent experience where a missionary, they just found me at my apartment complex. They're like, do you know any other non-members? And I'm like, I do not know any other non-members. And they're like, okay. And then they kept going. And then they talked to my buddy in his car when he picked me up 2 minutes later. And they're like, oh, we just met Colin. He's a great guy. And I'm like, thank you.
Yikes.
Thank you. So it's just been an interesting experience, because then also during the summer, some missionaries showed up and found out somebody knew me, and they're like, oh, Colin? You're like, what can we talk to him about? I'm like, what is this? What's going on here? So
and sometimes, like, I don't know if this is something the mission president has pushed here or not, but there have been multiple instances for me where the missionaries have reached out to my friends and asked them to help have me have missionary conversations. Like, there was one set that would call my roommates and my FHE brothers, family home evening brothers, like a group we have on Mondays.
Yeah, I go to FHE. I know that.
Yeah,
I've learned that terminology.
Might not know, yeah.
my bad.
But yes, you know. So we have like a group of like girls and guys in different apartments that have like a family group, basically is what it's supposed to be within the church. And the missionaries got all of their phone numbers and were contacting them like nonstop. Like, I had to call them and be like, listen, if you want to talk to me, you can just talk to me. Don't bother my roommates. Yeah. But how does it feel for you when you have people that you know or might even consider friends, like, give your phone number to the missionaries without asking you?
And this is definitely a difficult part, but I know the missionaries are nice people with great things to say, but at the end of the day, I think, like many people just in society in general, I'm a peaceful guy, and I want nothing more than just be left alone and live my life, right? At least what I've been taught in my life from family, from friends, from everywhere is, right, if you want something, usually you seek it out, right? You don't always have to shove it in front of a person and be like, what do you think, right? Sometimes, for better or worse, we have to learn the hard lessons, right? We have to make choices, and we have to choose whether or not to follow a new religion, follow a religion, or, even make the big life choices of, I'm going to move across the country and go to school, right? These are all things we have to do, and therefore we should be reaching out in order to figure out. So when my friends give my info without really asking me, or they give it and then say, I gave the info to the missionaries, for lack of a better term, it really feels like a betrayal, because, I have friends here who are members who haven't done that, who've been completely good about, they understand, I'm of one opinion, they're of another, and if I change my mind, they know and have stated that I can talk to them about it.
Yeah.
But they haven't given my information to missionaries because they've respected that boundary.
Yeah, it's like kind of a violation of consent, I feel like, when, like, if you have my personal phone number, please don't, like, in any other situation, you wouldn't just give it to someone.
Yeah.
That without asking me.
Yeah, you
so I
generally don't do that. It's uncouth.
Right, it's not cool. So don't do that. I told one friend, like, we had this whole conversation about, like, not giving non-member phone numbers to the missionaries without asking them first. And one of my proudest moments at BYU, I, like, walked into this class that we were in together, and she goes, Leah, I saw the missionaries yesterday, and I didn't give them your phone number. And I was like, oh, that's awesome. So, yeah. I think some people just don't think through it, because if you've been on a mission, then your default will be to give the missionaries our phone numbers. And like Colin said, if we want to find the missionaries, we know exactly where to find them. Yeah. So it's okay. And maybe we don't want to talk to missionaries. We want to talk to our friends about stuff. So, so Colin, I think one question a lot of people would have about your experience here is that a lot of people that go here are religious people. And so BYU, like, I've had good experiences with a lot of professors and students where they'll say, oh, you're not LDS? Well, what are you? And I'll say I'm Christian, and they're like, oh, that's okay. You believe in God. You believe in Jesus. No big deal. How have you kind of interacted with that environment? Like, how do people react when you say that you're an atheist?
To be honest, actually, that doesn't always come up. So my go-to for, oh, wait, you're not a member? That kind of go-to signal question for me is generally, because it's the most common question, I feel, especially maybe meeting a new friend or on dates, the fifth question you always get asked is, so where'd you do your mission?
Right.
And therefore, that's usually the opportunity I take to bring up, oh, I didn't do a mission because I'm not a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And therefore, sometimes people leave it at that and say, oh, okay. Other times they do ask, oh, what are you then? Are you Christian? Are you Catholic, right? Are you some other denomination? And that's usually when I tell them I'm atheist. But otherwise, generally for the most part, because people assume, they don't ask when I say I'm not a member. They don't always ask what specifically I am. So the whole I'm an atheist hasn't always come up. I think for when it has come up, people generally give the, oh, okay response. And then I usually get asked the, wait, so why'd you choose BYU? And then it's like I said, it is purely at the end of the day for the program. BYU has an amazing geology program. This is not a plug. It has an amazing geology program and fantastic paleontological resources and faculty members that I am super stoked to be studying with, even if my project sometimes makes me very, very sad, because it's a very hard project, which is going to be good. I'm just in the middle part where I've gone from, I like to put it, I'm a Marvel guy, I'm cheesy, stay with me here. I started out in terms of graduate school as what they intended Ultron to be. I currently am what Ultron is. And the day I finally defend and hopefully receive my master's degree will be what Vision became. I'm just currently in that middle part where I'm like, one day they'll see, one day they'll understand. I just need a little more time, so.
Yep, that's the struggle of getting a post, post undergraduate degree for sure.
But it's the program at the end of the day. First and foremost, I came here to study, and so academic first, and hang out, chill guy. Let's go on some geology field trips, pick up some cool rocks. 1.5, and so on and so forth. So,
Yep. That's definitely true. And we have a lot more masters and PhD students that are non-LDS than we have undergraduate students, because for this reason, because BYU has a lot of really incredible programs that people that aren't LDS are also interested in. And
Yeah.
so they end up here, get along well with the professor, and then the rest is history. So,
And to flip the script, ecologically wise, I think
yeah.
that's a beautiful thing,
Yeah.
because we get so much diversity by getting people from different faiths, different schools, from all over the world to come here. And therefore, we're able to understand each other's experience and go forward from that. And it's not as much of a monolith. It's not as much people who stayed here for undergrad and are here for graduate school.
Yeah.
Right? Instead, you have this guy's from over here, this person's from over here. And so they all get to share and create new experiences together. And a population is healthy when it has a wide gene pool. And so I think having a good, diverse graduate cohort is also a really good thing.
Yeah.
And so it's something
It's an
I
asset
love.
for BYU.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that.
For sure. And that's why we say in the honor code too, is we're not trying to take away from the environment being an LDS environment.
Nope.
But I do think when you are able to maintain that environment and also have people of other faiths and other backgrounds come in, that is such an asset to the school. And so I really have enjoyed meeting all my friends that are from different backgrounds here at BYU, because I think it brings such a just such a like beauty of diversity to the school that a lot of it doesn't have sometimes. So yeah, what is something that you would like people that are LDS or just like BYU students in general to know about atheism that you feel like they don't understand?
That's really difficult. You know, I think as I go forward here, a big thing that relates to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and it's an interesting part of their history I found, is that the church doesn't have an official stance either for or against evolution. Everyone assumes if you're atheist, oh, you're just total like full-blown evolutionist, right? That's what you're going for. There is no God or gods. This is just evolution is the only way, and that is your process, and therefore maybe Charles Darwin is a prophet. That's not the case. I think because the church doesn't take an official stance, you have people on all sides of the spectrum. People who are full-blown, I believe in the evolutionary method. I also believe God was involved with the process of creation, and therefore the two go together. You also have people, I've heard, haven't met anyone, but you have people who are creationists. They say the earth is 4,000 years old, and that's that. I think as an atheist, people might assume I'm this way versus this way, but I'm able to tell people, this is what I believe. Here's what I have learned from science. And I would say, yeah, maybe science has affected my beliefs, but I also I think I try to separate the two. The bigger thing, less related to atheism, that more I would like to share with any member of the Church of Jesus Christ who goes to BYU is just, I know it's very, 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 very easy, but do not assume that because of the way I looked and the way I act, I am a member of the church.
Yeah.
I have a different story to tell with new perspectives, and I would love to share those perspectives as they become relevant and also share my story. I may have been termed early on when I came here as the most Mormon, non-Mormon some people have ever met, but that is not the only thing about me.
Yeah.
I have a lot of things to share.
Yeah, and a lot of people look at us at like very much only in terms of the church, the LDS church, right? Where like everything about you is in relation to the church. Like, oh, you're super LDS acting, or oh, you look super LDS. And it's like, well, okay, but why does everything about me have to be some sort of like gauge of like how much it relates to the LDS church? Because we're so much more than that. And even within the LDS church, it shouldn't be like that, I don't think. We're just measured as, degrees of LDS or non-LDS or active or inactive. Like there's so much more to people as individuals, and when we start looking at them as individuals, that contributes to a sense of belonging.
You can find truly good people wherever you go in this world, and there are going to be some of those people that are truly beautiful human beings who have all the kindness of the world in their heart, who are active members of their faiths, whether it's a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, Catholic, Presbyterian, Muslim, Buddhist. I'm missing a ton, I know. Or you're going to find a ton of people who are truly great people who maybe do have a faith or don't, but aren't really active in a or their religion. And I think that's important. It's funny, this is coming from me. I've been called stubborn and seeing things always very black and white, but it's not. It is not black and white. There is a spectrum of people of all backgrounds.
Yeah, in every faith tradition and also outside of them. So, yeah, that's really cool. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
So, Colin, do you feel like you belong at BYU?
Yes.
Yeah.
I have loved my experience here. And I think like anybody, there are days where we have good and bad days at any university, any place where we're like, I'm proud to be a part of this campus, or today was a maybe not so great day for my campus. But at the end of the day, 9 times out of 10, I have amazing days here at BYU. I've met some fantastic people, and I am truly grateful and thankful to say that I am a member of BYU, and I love that.
Yeah. The redefining being a member. Now we're both members of the campus instead of the church.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is definitely an interesting line to walk. But I've really enjoyed it as well. And I'm really glad I'm here. So I think most non-members get to that point where we're just like, I'm happy to be here. Glad that I chose this school. I assume you're glad you chose BYU.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I am glad I chose BYU. I have a fantastic support system and some amazing people, once again, I get to work with, who I'm thankful for every day, because I know they care for me not only professionally, but personally. And, I try to take an interest in them, obviously, as they take an interest in me.
Right.
And so we have a good relationship.
Right. Completely agree with that. Is there anything that you would like to tell LDS students that go to BYU about being a non-member here?
I personally, this is probably a different opinion, I think it'd be great if we can find more people like all those who have spoken for the non-member project, find more non-members to come to BYU, because BYU has great programs, and so we should share that more with everyone, right? And obviously you have a ton of members of the church who are constantly applying, getting in, and attending BYU. And I don't know the statistics off the top of my head, but I know that there are not many non-members. And while I'm not saying flood the school with non-members, we should maybe find out, what can we do to convince more people, hey, you shouldn't only think of this school as the Mormon school. You should think of BYU as BYU, Brigham Young University, another excellent academic institution to consider for developing your skills and potentially developing your future career. Yeah.
And honestly, I think we understand the value of non-LDS students when it comes to graduate programs and when it comes to athletics. And then outside of that, not so much. So it would be really cool to see us recruiting more students that are non-LDS in the undergraduate programs. And just promoting BYU is a really great school because, like you said, it's kind of just known as the LDS school. You you said Mormon. We don't technically use that term anymore, but I think it's also fair to say that a lot of people outside of BYU do know as a quote-unquote Mormon school, not in a bad way. Like, that's not a pejorative term for people outside of the church. I know that the church has made an official stance on the use of the word Mormon. And you've probably heard it several times in this podcast and in previous ones. But I think it's important to note that when we use the term Mormon, I've never met someone outside of the LDS church that thought it was a pejorative term or was using it that way. So yeah, we're just adjusting to the name change thing outside of the LDS church. And also just being honest about our terms people have used towards us about the school. So I just want to clarify that. Yeah, but if people outside of BYU knew, this is just a really great school. It's not just an LDS school. Obviously, we want it to maintain its LDS environment because that's what it is for, and that's one of the main aims of education here is to be spiritually strengthening in an LDS capacity. But yeah, we can bring so much diversity and awesome new perspectives to campus if we start promoting it more towards people that are non-LDS. So I think that's a really interesting take on it.
Oh, and in connection with that, collaborations. I think it
Yeah.
would be good, scientifically and not. More
Hmm.
schools, more programs, careers should link up with BYU for international and national collaborations,
Yeah.
right? So scientific papers, uh, academic. Well, we already have. Or sorry, I was thinking sports.
Yeah.
Sports rivalries, which we already have, but also
Yeah.
BYU just joined the Pac-12. I'm not
Big
a
12.
Big 12. I'm not a sports guy.
Yeah.
Apologize. But that was fantastic because,
Yeah.
BYU's getting its name out there and they get to promote their program.
I completely agree with you. The collaborations are important, and I think it helps our university to have, you know, more of our name out there and even more respect. BYU students already have a lot of respect coming out of school here because the academic programs here are incredible and our professors are amazing. I've had so many great experiences with professors here. But yeah, just getting our name out there more as a school that is also, in an academic way and an athletic way, doing really cool things and being able to collaborate would be really amazing. So, yeah, do you have anything else that you'd like to say to, like, for instance, if you had a non-LDS student coming into BYU, what would you like to tell them before they get here?
I would tell them not to judge the program before they come here. I would tell them it's an excellent community.
Yeah.
And if you can truly, try to understand why they have the rules they do and
Mm-hmm.
live by them, it isn't maybe a burden as many of my friends would think of it,
Mm-hmm.
who I know.
Yeah.
And it's just a slightly different way to live. In some ways, I think it's helped me become a better person for sure,
Mm-hmm.
right? I'm not swearing, which I think is a very good thing.
Mm-hmm.
And, don't judge the book by its cover,
True.
right?
Yep. Yep. And I think that's something that a lot of non-members can bring to the conversation on this campus where we've spent a significant amount of time interacting with our LDS friends who we love very dearly and have learned how to not judge books by their cover, at least not as much as maybe we had before we came here. And that's something that we would like to bring to campus so that all of us can have that experience of not being judged based on what we look like or how we talk or how many LDS terms we know or whether or not we've been on a mission, but just being judged based on the content of our character and how we act and who we are as individuals. So thank you so much, Colin, for being on today.
Thank you for having me.